This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Made necessary by the Katrina recovery, New Orleans had become a nationwide leader in charter school public education. With the beginning of a new school year, there are some changes, especially at one new non-charter school. Local infrastructure needs changes too, especially with recent power outages and boil water advisories. We'll look at these stories tonight, as well as President Joe Biden's visit to New Orleans and his Cancer Moonshot program. Plus, the New Orleans police chief says crime is on the decline, and preparations for the Superbowl, including one technical improvement that will be aided by Taylor Swift. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Dave Cohen, news director, WWL Radio. Robert Collins, political analyst, Fox 8 and columnist, Verité News. And Marie Fazio, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. We'll go over to Dave first because the president paid us a quick visit. It was a busy visit. He and First Lady Jill Biden to New Orleans, specifically for announcement of money to fund this Cancer Moonshot.
Yeah, the president and the First Lady have made it very clear that they really, really want to see significant progress in reducing the number of cancer deaths in the United States. It's coming at a time when the Cancer Society is saying we're about to see a huge increase in cancer deaths, particularly amongst men, baby boomer men, more as a result just of their aging than anything else. So they're trying to stay ahead of that. And one of the projects that they think will really be helpful is a magic scanner that Tulane's been working on for years now. Researchers at Tulane have been trying to help oncologists and surgeons be able to better determine when they go in to remove a tumor, when they go in to remove cancerous tissue, did they get it all? So through the president's and the First Lady's efforts, they've identified $23 million that will be available to the researchers at Tulane to get over the hump of completing this effort to get this scanner so that when a surgeon removes tissue from a cancerous tumor, they'll be able to tell within 10 minutes if they got all of the cancer. That's the goal. Right now, they have to take biopsies, send it to a lab, wait for analysis, and during that time, a patient doesn't know if they got all the cancer or not. And it can take weeks. Then they have to schedule another surgery if they didn't get it all. And sometimes it's 2, 3, or more. So the idea here is, and they will have benchmarks in the coming years to show the progress that they're making. It's particularly with the computer end of it and the software end of it that they really are having some hurdles they have to get over, and they're hoping this money will help do that. But that they'll be able to tell, okay, we got it all or we didn't. If they didn't, patient's still under anesthesia, still on the operating table, they can go back in and get the rest of it.
Say valuable time. I mean, valuable time with something like that too. Time wasted, I mean, impacts one's life expectancy, potentially.
Absolutely.
So really a tremendous progress.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of great hope that this and many of the other projects they're working on, you may recall the First Lady came here last year to meet with the Cancer Consortium and identify projects there. So New Orleans and Louisiana are playing a significant role in this Cancer Moonshot, and Tulane specifically now in the spotlight. And there's a lot of optimism that they can make progress. We've been seeing significant progress, and obviously Louisiana is a great place to study a lot of this because we have amongst the highest cancer rates, and sadly amongst the highest cancer death rates anywhere in the nation.
Well, maybe that answers what I wanted, because usually when you hear about this kind of research, it's coming out of Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins, and like, why New Orleans? But that's because we are such a good place, maybe for the worst of reasons, but to study it.
Yeah, and the progress that's been made here. Really, since we've seen UMC open, we've seen the increase in biomedical research, we've seen an increase in attention specifically to cancer, there have been significant discoveries made and progress made here, and you do have a larger sample of people on which to develop this technology because you have more people with cancer. So that was significant, and there was some excitement surrounding that. It was a 4-hour visit. At least that's what we were told, and that's what we expected. Air Force One landed shortly after 1 p.m. at Armstrong International, and we knew that there was going to be a motorcade. And you know, the most impactful thing, regardless of who's the president, of course, for most people, is the traffic created by a presidential visit, particularly in the wake of the attempted assassination of former President Trump. We saw security at a very high level, and for obvious reasons. So we knew they were going to shut down the interstate. We knew that they had to get the president from the airport to the A.B. Freeman School of Business on the Tulane campus for the event, and that we expected. We understood, and in fact, the pool reporters assigned to cover the president's visit understood, they would then leave Tulane, go back to Air Force One, and the president would go back to Washington. Well, about 10 o'clock on the morning of the visit, Tommy Satanovich, owner of Drago's, tells us he got a call from Cedric Richmond, who worked in the Biden administration, said, hey, I don't know if we can make this happen, but I want to bring the president out to dinner at your place. And it wasn't on the schedule. It wasn't planned. Secret Service didn't do any pre-visits. Satanovich had no idea. And so that's at 10 o'clock in the morning. And by about 5:15, the President of the United States was eating at Drago's.
That's amazing that that happened that way. And then what a wonderful place for them to go to. And Clara Fatanovich, of course, you know, Tommy's mom, and she and Drago, of course, established that restaurant. I saw a picture posted on Facebook by the Fatanoviches. Clara looked so happy to be standing there next to the President of the United States.
I wonder, like Biden looks so vulnerable. Is he an oyster eater? I mean, they fix all these great oyster dishes for him.
We're told he did have some charbroiled oysters. We don't know how many exactly, but he actually ate a cheeseburger. And when I heard that, I said, wait, what? And I had to actually go and look at Drago's menu. Is there a cheeseburger on the Drago's menu? But we're told he did have oysters, and he did then have a cheeseburger. But Mrs. Satanovich was almost in tears, Tommy said, because she recently wrote a book about her process of, as an immigrant to the United States, had to move to Canada and wait about a decade before they were allowed to move into America. And then they opened a real mom and pop restaurant in New Orleans, in Metairie, in Fat City, and to have the President of the United States come there, she gave him an autographed copy of her book.
That's wonderful.
and one condition that Tommy Satanovich put on the visit was, my mom's got to be able to meet and take a picture with the president. That's the only
good son. He's always been a good son.
And she was happy. But he said the president actually spent a good 5 minutes just walking around and going and meeting the chefs and the busboys and the servers and everybody, and shaking. And whoever wanted to shake the president's hand absolutely had the opportunity to do so. And that all came together in literally less than 3 hours.
I thought it was very ecumenical that they're right on the edge of Troy Carter's district, a Democrat, but they brought in the Steve Scalise's district, a Republican. So that's still open-mindedness, you know.
Well, Satanovich actually said Steve Scalise is one of his best friends in the world. But politics was not an issue for him. He said it doesn't matter if it was a Democrat, a Republican, or what. The President of the United States was eating at the restaurant with his father's name on it, and his mother got to meet the president. I mean, they're a true American dream come true. And so they said it really was rewarding and fantastic.
He said the leader of the free world. That means a lot to the Satanovich.
And curing cancer in the process.
Hopefully.
I'm a big fan of Clara. Quite the lady, so I'm glad she had that chance to meet the president.
Indeed.
All right, thanks a lot, Dave. All righty, Robert, let's go on over to you. You do, and it's wonderful having you here because I see you all the time on Fox 8 and listening to your analysts, so it's really good to have you join us here. And you're also writing for Verité.
Yes.
And you are an urban studies professor as well.
Yes.
So you carry a lot of hats. So you wrote a piece about infrastructure in the city of New Orleans, and God knows, it needs some improvement. How do we go about making it stronger? I mean, we had a Mylar balloon incident that had people boiling their water for 2 days in the city.
Well, yeah, so the big issue, of course, is we had a big hearing at the city council yesterday, which was predicated by the Mylar balloon incident, which, sewage and water board employee seriously injured, caused the boil water advisory. Since then, actually, since my article came out, we've actually had a second boil water advisory for New Orleans East, and also had a rain event that knocked out 4,000 Entergy customers. So we have ongoing issues with both with Entergy and with the Sewage and Water Board. And what's interesting is that last year, Verité News commissioned a survey, and did a set of polls asking people, do they have confidence in public utilities or not? Won't come to as a surprise to anybody that the answer is no. 71% of the public said that they do not have any confidence in their public utilities. And the issue, I think, is this. So if you ask the public utilities, they're going to say we don't get enough funding. Entergy says they need more money to harden their system. Sewage and Water Board says that they need more money to upgrade their pumps, which a lot of their water mains are 100 years old. They said it's just unrealistic to expect us to maintain the system. But if you ask the general public's position is that there's mismanagement going on, and before the public, before we as voters are going to agree to any new fees or any new taxes, we have to feel that you are managing the money that you have right now in an efficient manner, and the voters don't believe that, and so there's not going to be any new funding until they can raise the confidence level of the voters, of the citizens that are receiving the services, and so they're kind of stuck in a catch-22.
Yes, really, it is a catch-22, because how do you get that confidence back? The way to get the confidence back is to see efficiency, to see water bills that really are, true to what the water use was, for example. It's not an easy hurdle.
No, and that's a whole another issue. The billing issue, and there's even confusion about. There's disagreement amongst the Sewage and Water Board and the state legislature over billing. State legislature passed a law saying that bills are now that citizens can opt into fixed rate billing, which will be based on your average for the year. But the Sewage and Water Board said no. Our understanding is that that fixed rate billing is going to be based by actual readings and estimates that we do during the year. And there was a whole controversy over the last year over the estimates, because a lot of citizens says those estimates were not correct, and it was because of the estimating system that some citizens were getting just astronomical bills that were impossible for them to pay. So there's just so much confusion right now going on with the whole customer service system in Sewage and Water Board, that the whole system is going to have to be reformed.
And such needs. But we are seeing right now, because of Superbowl coming, a lot of infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, we saw this for the last Super Bowl. We're seeing this again for this Super Bowl. The city has to look nice. Obviously, the world, the eyes of the world are going to be on us. So we always see the state legislature appropriating a lot of money for infrastructure improvements. We always see our congressional delegation working across the aisle to get federal money for infrastructure improvements, and of course that's great. I mean, all the citizens are happy with that. We all want to, we are built to host, as the old saying goes.
We want to look good.
We want to look good, but at the same time, some people say, well, is this just like every 12 years when we have the Super Bowl? Is that when you want to spend infrastructure? And of course, the infrastructure spending, while it's great, is targeted to those areas where we know that tourists will either be traveling, those roads where they will be traveling, the airport, those places downtown where they will be staying. So this is not general infrastructure improvement. This is infrastructure improvement targeted to spruce the city up and make it to look good for visitors, which is necessary. I don't think anybody argues against that, but some people would like to see more attention to public infrastructure in between Super Bowl years as well.
Let's not just clean up when we have company coming.
Exactly.
Right.
But
Exactly.
to be fair, a Super Bowl, is going to generate income that can help pay for these kind of things. If you don't have the Super Bowl, you're not going to have a lot of that money there to do
no,
those things.
I agree. You have to, you have to look great for the Super Bowl, especially since getting Super Bowls has become so competitive now. I mean, as we know, I mean, New Orleans, we used to be sort of the number one city for hosting Super Bowls, but now we have so many other cities that are spending $1 billion, $2 billion building brand new stadiums. We don't have a new stadium. We have an old Superdome, and so it's a lot more competitive.
Right, and then you as an urban studies expert, you know that, functioning infrastructure is really important to keep a city running.
Oh yeah,
Basically, I mean, it's just basic.
you have to. I mean, especially a city as complex as ours, with our geography and geology below sea level. Without functioning infrastructure, we can't survive.
A lot of layers there, so problems that still remain to be solved, that's for sure. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, Marie, over to you, because school has started back around the state.
Yes.
And here in the city of New Orleans, basically, charter schools now with the exception of one school.
Right, so the Leah Chase School opened in early August. It is the first permanent district-run school in 2 decades. So NOLA Public Schools, as everyone is aware, we have a very complicated school system here in New Orleans, made up of charter schools, charter management organizations who run the day-to-day operations of most of these schools, and the school board functions mostly as an overseer. The superintendent can renew contracts for these charters or choose not to renew, so she has that power there. But this school, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, is going to be directly run, so it'll function as a traditional school. So.
And charter schools are public schools.
Correct, yes. They have more oversight over specific day-to-day operations and function financially differently than a traditional school would.
So we see now this, once again, a return of a direct run school by the school board. Is this something that they anticipate seeing happening more?
So that's an interesting question. The reason this came to be, almost no one was expecting it right out. In I think it was February, the Orleans Parish School Board directed the superintendent to take over operations of Lafayette Academy, which was a charter school that did not meet requirements for renewal. So the superintendent recommended that it be closed. So that's how the district took over this particular school. And a few months later, the school board directed her to come up with a plan. I believe she's going to present it to the board in October for how the district might take over more schools in the future. So this could very well be a trend of, as districts or as charter schools fail to get their contracts renewed, the district could take over operations rather than see those schools closed entirely.
Like the charter schools, will Chase be open enrollment where anyone from anywhere in the city can attend?
Correct, yes. So, and I believe they are still enrolling students. I think they still have openings in 4th and 5th grade, but other than that, they're completely packed. So, and that's a huge feat for having planned this school in a matter of months.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a quick turnaround. And real quick, I wanted you to touch on also, and this is a statewide issue, cell phones in schools.
Yes. So
and what does the new law say?
The new law says students may not have cell phones during instructional hours, and districts are interpreting it a little bit differently because there is a clause there's a sentence that essentially says you may not have cell phones, but if you do bring cell phones to school, you can't turn them on during instructional hours. So it's gone district to district. In East Baton Rouge, they're saying don't bring them on the buses at all, keep them at home. In New Orleans, charters are handling it differently. Some schools, you walk in the building, you hand it over, the administration keeps it in a bin, and you pick it up at the end of the school day.
So it varies, because teachers were saying, wait, we're really having a problem here with these kids using with their nose in their phones during the instruction hours. Right?
Yeah, it's a huge distraction,
I would guess.
a monster of a problem to tackle, because now critics fear that now we're adding more responsibility to teachers' workload, having them police cell phones in addition to everything else that they already do.
I'll tell you one thing that's changed is I remember before charter schools, I think the school board's meetings were on Monday night. Every Monday night they'd watch the news, and they'd all be fighting each other, okay? It was one group, they were all very powerful, they had a lot of contracts that they controlled. The parents were mad at them, they were all mad at each other, and they'd just be fighting. And they became kind of like celebrities because of their fighting skills, all right? Now it's even harder to know who's on the school board. I mean, they don't have that kind of visibility. But at least the fights are dispersed among all the charter schools. And I don't know if it's better or worse, but it's certainly different, and it's a lot more peaceful.
It is very peaceful. There's this a spirit of collaboration, as they like to say.
Yeah, and there are those that support charters and those that don't. So we'll see where Orleans goes. Okay,
Right.
thanks a lot. Dave, let's go back over to you because we're talking about crime now in the city of New Orleans. Crime rate's down?
Crime rate is down significantly, and the police chief is making the rounds touting what she calls amazing results that are really incredible. She says all eyes in law enforcement across the country are on New Orleans now to find out how is the NOPD doing this. And she is making it very clear this is not just a national trend, because around the country, most police departments are seeing a reduction in violent crime now. After we saw historic lows pre-pandemic, nearly every major metropolitan area saw a huge spike in crime during the whole COVID period. It's down nationwide about 13% for violent crime. In New Orleans, it's down more than 25%. And the police chief says that is quite a feat, dealing with the smallest NOPD in modern history, only 900 police officers. But she says it was very intentional, is very strategic, and now she's fielding questions from other agencies across the country on how did you do it. And she said it's not that difficult. They targeted, they were proactive, they went after the worst of the worst criminals, and they had a strategy, and it's worked very well.
Citizen participation, too, the Crime Coalition, right?
Absolutely. The Crime Coalition bringing together thousands of organizations, businesses, individuals who wanted to all get on the same page and help address the crime conundrum from one end to the other. Now, almost every crime category is now lower than it was in 2019, and that's the low watermark for New Orleans. We had historically low crime in 2019. Still, shootings, non-fatal shootings, and murders are still slightly above the 2019 level. But other things, from carjackings to armed robberies, are down from 30 to 50%. The only category that's up significantly in New Orleans and pretty much nationwide is shoplifting and general theft. They're seeing that still up. So today, the mayor and the police chief, along with others in the criminal justice system, held what they said was going to be a news conference. It was not a conference. It was a presentation. There was no questions. The mayor did not allow anyone to get anywhere near her or ask her any questions about anything. In fact, her PR team took the media on a tour of some new crime-fighting tools they had at the very end of the presentation, so they could not even holler questions at the mayor. The mayor went one way, the media went the other way, and there was no interaction. But she is at least, we haven't seen her very much for several months now, she is at least standing side by side with the police chief to stress. And the police chief was very gracious in thanking the mayor for her support in helping give her what she needed to accomplish this with the NOPD.
Well, I hope it continues because that's the direction we want to see the rates go down.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, thanks a lot. Okay, Ian, over to you. Superdome, Super Bowl safety.
Yeah, well, we've already talked about some of the repairs they've done. You know, the other point I want to mention, though, about New Orleans, and the difference to the infrastructure and repairs and all that, is that New Orleans is a city that people like to visit.
Yes.
And there's always a demand to come back. And I remember that, when the Saints were in the Super Bowl in Miami Beach, there were a lot of people. I mean, had a new stadium, you had Miami, but a lot of people from New Orleans complained because it was all dispersed, it was spread all over, whereas New Orleans is compact, and people like that. It's a very convenient city. What comes to mind, though, is two Super Bowls in particular that I think had like an interesting twist to them, and both had like a little bit of a tragedy built around them. The 2002 Super Bowl was the first major event in the country after September the 11th. And this was a big single event. There'd been the World Series, but that's over several days. But this is everything focused on one night. It was declared a national emergency watch site, and things were gated off all around. I remember the night, actually 2 nights before, jets from Callender Field were flying in circles all night long, at different levels. Right. They'd fly low, they'd fly high, they'd go all around. So there was a lot of security, and it went safely. And curiously, the team that won that Super Bowl was the Patriots. It was the first time they ever won, and they won the 2002. But the other one was the 2013 Super Bowl. This is the one where the electricity went off in the third quarter. And the city tried so hard. I remember the city really did a great job in preparing. Then all of a sudden, the electricity went off for about, I think like 23 minutes, and it became an story. I remember it wouldn't have been so bad, but one of the reporters, Jim Nance, who was the color guy, wouldn't let it go. That's all he'd talk about the rest of the game. Well, how is this going to affect the outcome? Will there be protests? Will the NFL have to get involved? And he kept on mentioning it. Ultimately, it was resolved, and the Baltimore beat the Rams, and so it went okay. What was curious, though, is what caused the outage was at halftime show, Beyonce was performing, and she used so much electricity and all that there was a electrical tripper that knocked off the power. So it was Beyonce that caused the problem. This time around, they say we've built in redundancies. There's a Taylor Swift concert in October, and so we're going to watch that concert to be sure we don't have that problem. And so the problem that Beyonce created, Taylor Swift will be used to provide proof for.
Be the test to see that if it works. The Taylor Swift concert's pretty energetic too.
Absolutely,
huh?
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Other stories, Eve. Over to you.
Yeah. Speaking of Super Bowl improvements, there are going to be murals coming uptown, and there's one on Canal Street, which is about energy and the NASA's behind it, and it's about the way that NASA and satellites can be a way of looking over our energy fields and our natural wonders. And so that's up now, and we're going to see more murals coming up.
Pretty cool. All right, Dave.
Talking back about the Sewage and Water Board, they did say this week in a hearing with local and state lawmakers that they've got 35,000 smart meters already installed, and that process is moving along, and they hope that solves the billing issues. But somebody got a $142,000 water bill this month, and so there were threats that the state may take over the Sewage and Water Board if they can't fix this sooner.
You don't want to see that kind of bill, that's for sure. Robert, over to you.
Well, okay, so we've seen stories in the paper about the University of New Orleans having serious enrollment problems. They're just the canary in the coal mine. We're going to see enrollment problems with all of our state universities coming soon, because as we look at the upcoming high school classes, they're getting smaller and smaller every year because of demographic changes. And so the state university boards are going to have to really figure out how to deal with this, with the coming enrollment crisis.
Okay. Marie.
All of a story this weekend about uniform back to school crisis. Parents were standing in line a few weekends ago for 3 hours outside of a store. So just kind of the madness.
Ahead, huh?
Yeah, that's what they say.
All right, Marie, thanks a lot. And I want to remind everybody tomorrow, August 17th from 1 to 4 here at WYES, we're holding our Coastal Expo, 15 different organizations here to tell you about what's going on with restoring our coast and how you can get involved. So from 1 to 4 here at WYES 916 Navarre Avenue, our Coastal Expo. We hope to see you there. Thanks, guys, for being here, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.